Trade rumors revolving around the New York Rangers continue to intensify as their poor play and lack of accountability continue to pile up. And one insider has revealed where the captain of the New York Rangers could be headed to in a trade. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, it's free. Hit that subscribe button and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And of course, over the last couple of days, we've had some interesting news come out with the Rangers actively shopping Jacob Trouba and of course Chris Kreider. And we'll get into the Chris Kreider thing later in the video. I don't believe that they should trade that player, but Jacob Trouba, it looks like his time could be done as a New York Ranger. And there's a lot of interesting and conflicting, honestly, reports over the last couple of days. And we'll get into this from Vince Mercogliano. The timing of the New York Rangers GM Chris Drury's message about wanting to make a trade is seen as peculiar around NHL circles, with many questioning how viable a big deal is at this stage, which is true. It was more likely to get done in the offseason. Right now, in the middle of the season, when teams are still just kind of figuring out what they are, and some teams are, you know that they're a playoff team at this point. Some teams are being disappointed, like the Rangers, and finding out things that you probably didn't think you were going to find out, or at least, some Rangers fans didn't. But it is very interesting with Jacob Trouba right now, and not just Jacob Trouba, but obviously Chris Kreider and all the New York Rangers top stars, because they're obviously trying to shop them because they want to shake things up. And I think, and I said it in a previous video, this message from Chris Drury that came out on Monday was more about getting the team to wake up. It was a wake-up call, I believe, to get them scared. Okay, yeah, we're not going to stick together here. They're going to make some uncomfortable moves. They're going to trade Chris Kreider, who's the longest tenured New York Ranger at this point. I think it was a wake-up call. And then to see the response against the St. Louis Blues, the lackluster response, I think it's very, very clear now that they are going to have to shake things up. Because again, I thought it was just a wake-up call, something to throw out there so the team would see it and decide if they want to play for each other or not. And it seems like they do not. It was a very, very poor effort. And I saw this the other day as well from Hockey Insider. The New York Rangers are actively shopping Jacob Trouba, according to multiple league sources. Now, I see a tweet like this and the name and the username, and I go, okay, how much is there, behind this really, right? This is just a tweet. This is just a person. But insider Kyle Hall as well has said that, following Elliot Friedman's trade rumors tweet the other day, he has been asking around on Jacob Trouba, and apparently Jacob Trouba would prefer to go to the Western Conference if he were to get traded, which is, I wouldn't say new, but a little bit surprising. And he's also heard that Dallas, Vegas, and Minnesota could be in the mix and a fit for the Rangers captain. But the Rangers in any trade, and I think most people would have, saw this coming, will have to retain some salary on Jacob Trouba, which if the Rangers have to retain $2 million to free up $6 million of cap space right now to be able to go out and get another younger big fish, maybe use some draft picks, I think it's worth it at this point, because Jacob Trouba, it's over, I think, as a New York Ranger. We knew it was going to be over after this year. They were trying to get rid of him this offseason, Chris Drury was. They were actively trying to trade him to the Detroit Red Wings. It was so close until Jacob Trouba got wind of it and put them on his no-trade list, which opened up on July 1st. So I think his time as a New York Ranger is really rapidly coming to an end here. And again, as you can see on the JFresh cards here, and not just JFresh, the eye test as well, I don't see them trading Chris Kreider. I think that would be a really bad move. I would see that as maybe a panic move even, because he makes less and he has a modified no trade clause. So he's the only one really you can trade when you should be trading and moving off of a guy like Mika Zibanejad if you can, because that contract is looking absolutely atrocious right now. And I just thought this was very interesting from Kyle Hall that, it looks like it could be a Western Conference team, that they're actively shopping Jacob Trouba. I thought that was very interesting. And Jacob Trouba spoke out on potentially getting moved. And obviously there's been a lot of noise since the offseason about him getting traded. And he said, it's a part of the business. I'm happy to be here and focus on playing hockey. He can't really control that. And that, of course, is being traded. And there's a lot to be made out of, obviously his wife is a doctor, and there was a lot of that being said during the summer as well in the residency. It ends after this year, so I believe he would be open to being traded. Not that he has much of a choice if it's to a team that's not on his trade list, which opened up on July 1st. He had a no movement clause. It now has turned in for the last 2 years a modified no trade clause. So not that he has much say, but I think he would be more open to moving now. because his wife's residency ends in this new year coming 2025. So we knew that he was going to be traded this offseason anyway. So why not kick it off now? It might be a little bit harder to move that salary now in season, but the Rangers got to do something. They have to shake something up, and they have to get younger. First of all, because obviously their stars are quickly starting to age, and we're now seeing that with even Zibanejad's play. They're going to have to do something, and pretty quickly here, to kind of reshape the lineup. And not just that, Jacob Trouba also didn't speak to the media the other night, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. You are the captain of the New York Rangers, one of the biggest hockey teams in the world, and you did not speak to the media. I think that's awful. That's a terrible look, as most fans are saying, as you can see here. He's in trade rumors right now. He didn't speak to the media after a terrible loss. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and honestly a really, really bad look from the Rangers captain. And I thought this was interesting too. And Phil kind of pulled this out of an article from Vince Mercogliano. And he said, there's also the question of how all of this will be perceived by other players, both current and potential signings in the future. And that, of course, is, Chris Drury coming out and saying that they're actively shopping two of their, biggest names on the team in the middle of the season, in the middle of, struggles, and the fact that the team is playing unsustainable hockey. And he said, business is business, but people around the league take notice of how these uncomfortable situations are handled. They see respected leaders like Kreider and Trouba twisting in the wind with little communication or fair warning. And that's the other thing I wanted to point out too. Jacob Trouba has said that he hasn't actually spoken to Chris Drury about this yet. And that's one reason why I believe Chris Drury doing this was more just a wake-up call. But I think after that response in the game against St. Louis, he knows that he has to make a move at this point to shake this team up, because I don't know if they're going to be able to find it in that dressing room at this point. But obviously, of what happened with Barclay Goodrow last year as well. But my, counter to that, yes, you have to think about things like that, because players like to feel safe, right? With whatever team that they're signing with. But my counter to that is Vegas is still a very, very appealing destination to a lot of players. They've won a Stanley Cup, and they're one of the most cutthroat organizations in the entire league, and that's why they've been successful. Vegas is very, what have you done for me lately? And if you're not doing anything for them lately, you're gone. You are going to get traded. So we saw the way that they handled Fleury, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, whatever. A lot of players in that organization get cut if they are not performing, and they want to win. So I feel like the Rangers and Drury had a little bit of that this summer. They were showing a little bit of that. Obviously, they couldn't move off Trouba, but I think that they're still showing that, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You have to make some very uncomfortable decisions if you want to win. And speaking of uncomfortable, some players have to start getting uncomfortable. If the Rangers are unable to make a trade here, you have to start getting uncomfortable. Like, this is one clip from AJ on Twitter the other night of a scrum. Obviously, some of the guys trying to get the team back into the game. Look at Zibanejad here. Like, get involved there. You got to grab a guy, start roughing them up. Cooley's in there throwing hands, and he's your best player right now offensively, defensively, all over the ice, 5-on-5, and he's in there throwing hands. You have to get involved. Get in there, get your hands dirty. So, lead by example. You're one of the leaders on this team. You're wearing an A on your sweater. They have to be better. They have to be better. The fans see it. And I think the players on the team see it. And speaking of Zibanejad, before we wrap up here, there was an optional practice, an optional skate yesterday, which saw guys like Lafreniere. Hito was actually skating as well, which is a good sign. VC, you see all the names here, and Panarin. I think Panarin has actually been a bright spot on the team this year. Like, he's been very, put your head down, get to work. He's putting up a lot of points. I think he's been playing pretty good. Like, there's been little said about Panarin because I feel like he's been playing pretty decently. But again, Mika Zibanejad not on the ice for this optional skate, and I think a lot of fans have the same sentiment as Statboy Steven here, that, like, if you've been on the ice for 11 of the team's last 14 goals against, maybe you want to put in some work at morning skate. Maybe you're not taking time off. And if he is injured, why are you playing? You should be resting until you're 100% and give somebody else who's hungry from Hartford a chance to play. So that's how I feel about that. If he is injured, don't be playing. And if you aren't injured, you should be at optional morning skate to practice some things that, you haven't been playing well lately. You've been missing defensive assignments. It's been brutal. And last thing I'll touch on before we wrap up here is Artemi Panarin. And like I mentioned, there's been little said about him so far this season because of how many points he's been putting up. I think he's been playing pretty well as well. And he went on to say, we have to stop it somehow. It doesn't matter how we feel or not. We are professionals. Everyone has that experience when things are not going well in your days. We've just got to wake up tomorrow, fix our mistakes, and be ready for Carolina. And I think that's a pretty good attitude to have. And again, little said about Panarin so far this year because he has been playing so well. And, you know, everyone's got to buy in a little bit more. Like, he's not, you know, an angel on all of this. He's, you know, not getting away free in all of this. I think he has to be better in some areas for sure, but he's been putting up a lot of points, and I like the mindset. Put your head down, get to work, and get 2 points. And hopefully the Rangers can do that against a very, very good Carolina Hurricanes team who are very hot right now. And this is going to be a very interesting test here. This could make or break this team as we know them. But let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.